The champagne was Dom Perignon, the chandelier was Venetian crystal, and the man raising a toast in my honor was planning to have me committed by midnight. I just didn't know it yet. It was a Friday evening in late October, and we were on the rooftop terrace of the Bellworth, one of those private dining clubs in downtown Chicago, where the waitlist alone costs more than most people's rent. My husband Grant had reserved the entire floor to celebrate the closing of a $420 million mixed-use development along the lakefront, the Ashford Crown Project. My father's last dream before the cancer took him. Grant stood at the head of the long marble table, his taille loosened just enough to look casual, his smile practiced to perfection. He lifted his glass toward me. None of this would have been possible without my wife. She is the heartbeat of Ashford Group, and I'm the luckiest man alive to stand beside her. The table erupted in applause. 23 people, most of them his relatives, clapping like he'd just cured a disease. I held my glass but didn't drink. Something about the way the applause landed felt rehearsed, not celebratory. More like the final note of a hymn at a funeral where everyone already knows the body is cold. The Ashford Crown had been my father's obsession for the last 5 years of his life. Hugh Ashford had started with a single renovation crew in Pilsen and built it into one of the largest development firms in the Midwest. When he died 2 years ago, I stepped up as CEO. I was 34, terrified and alone in a boardroom full of men who looked at me like I was a temp. Grant had been my anchor. At least, that's what I told myself. We'd been married for 8 years. He was charming, well-spoken, and had a way of making you feel like you were the only person in any room. After my father's funeral, he'd held me in the parking lot of the church and whispered, "You don't have to do this alone. I'm here." So I let him in. I gave him a VP title. I brought his brother Trent into procurement. I let his sister Paige run internal communications. I even hired his cousin Dominic to oversee building security and IT after Grant said the old systems were outdated. That night on the rooftop, they were all there. Trent in a suit that probably cost more than his annual output, laughing too loud at his own jokes. Paige with her phone out, filming Grant from every angle, making sure the internal newsletter would show her brother looking presidential. Dominic leaning against the far wall near the service elevator, arms crossed, watching everything and saying nothing, and Lorraine. My mother-in-law sat at the center of the table like a queen holding court, her silver hair swept up, a strand of pearls tight around her throat. She raised her wine glass and said, loud enough for the whole terrace to hear, "When a ship finds its captain, everything falls into place." Grant has proven that a firm hand is what Ashford Group needed all along. I set my glass down. The firm hand that built the company belonged to my father, Lorraine. The table went quiet. Lorraine smiled, the kind of smile that has teeth behind it. "Of course, dear. We all loved Hugh, but a company can't run on memory." Grant squeezed my shoulder. "She doesn't mean anything by it. Mom's just proud." He picked up a small glass of something amber and golden and placed it in front of me. "Here, I had them make your favorite, old-fashioned with the smoked cherry. Just relax tonight." I looked at the drink. It was beautiful. A perfect sphere of ice. An orange peel curled on the rim, a dark cherry resting at the bottom. I reached for it. That's when a young man carrying a tray of appetizers passed behind my chair and caught the sleeve of my wrap with the edge of his tray. A bowl of burrata and roasted tomatoes slid off and landed squarely on my lap, olive oil and balsamic splattering across my ivory silk dress. Lorraine gasped. "For God's sake, is anyone screening the help tonight?" Trent threw his napkin on the table. "Get the manager up here. This is supposed to be a private event." Grant shot up from his chair. But he didn't look at the stain on my dress. He didn't look at me. He looked at the old-fashioned, still untouched on the table. For half a second, his eyes weren't soft. They were calculating. The young man was already bowing and stammering apologies. His name tag read Ezra, and he couldn't have been older than 21. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. Please, let me take you to the restroom downstairs. The club will cover any dry cleaning, the full replacement, whatever you need." Lorraine was still fuming. Paige had lowered her phone. Dominic had shifted from the wall toward the service elevator. Grant reached for my arm. "I'll take her." I pulled back. "I don't know why, something instinctive. Something about the way his hand closed too fast." I said. "Stay with the guests. I'll be right back." Grant's jaw tightened. Paige forced a laugh. "Hurry back, we need a family photo for the newsletter." I followed Ezra off the terrace and into the elevator. The doors closed. The noise of the party vanished. Ezra hit the button for the second floor, then turned to me. The apologetic expression was gone. In its place was something raw and urgent. "Mrs. Prescott, please listen carefully. Do not go back upstairs." I stared at him. "What?" "Don't drink what your husband gave you. Don't go back to that table. Find a reason to leave the building." My hand was still pressing a napkin against the stain on my dress. The elevator hummed. "Who are you?" "I'm nobody." I bus tables 3 nights a week to pay for community college. But yesterday I was cleaning the private dining room after a lunch reservation, and I heard your husband talking to the man who's always near the elevator, the big one, Dominic. What did they say? Ezra pulled out his phone. His hands were shaking. I recorded part of it. He hit play. The volume was low. I leaned close. At first, just the sound of plates being stacked, a door closing. Then Grant's voice. The drink has to happen before dessert. Once she's out, Dom takes her down the freight elevator to the car. Lorraine handles the narrative. Paige has the internal announcement ready to go. By morning, I'll have temporary control of operations and the board won't question it. Dominic's voice. What if she wakes up before we get to the house? Grant. She won't. And if she starts to come around, we say she had a panic attack. Dr. Fenton is on call. He'll document whatever we need. The recording ended. I gripped the railing inside the elevator, so hard my knuckles turned white. When did you hear this? Yesterday around 2. I was behind the partition folding napkins. They didn't see me. Why are you helping me? Ezra looked at the floor. 3 years ago, my little sister had a brain tumor. We couldn't afford the surgery. Ashford Group's Employee Assistance Fund covered it. My mom used to work for your dad's janitorial crew. She said the CEO personally approved it. That was you. I felt something crack inside my chest. My sister is 11 now. She plays soccer. She's annoying and loud, and she's alive because someone signed a piece of paper. He looked up at me. I wasn't going to stand in a kitchen and let them hurt the person who saved her. The elevator opened on the 2nd floor. A quiet hallway, dim lighting, the scent of cedar and leather from the lounge next door. Ezra, does anyone know you're talking to me? No, ma'am. I switched shifts to work this event. I was going to try to warn you somehow. Spilling the food was the only thing I could think of. I closed my eyes. My mind was racing. Grant's voice in that recording was the same voice that had told me he loved me this morning over coffee. The same voice that had sung our daughter's lullaby before we lost the pregnancy. The same voice that had held me up at my father's graveside. I opened my eyes. Where is the staff exit? Through the kitchen, down the back stairs. There's a loading dock on Lower Wacker. But if you just disappear, they'll know something's wrong. He was right. If I vanished, Grant would activate every contingency. Dominic controlled our building security, our home cameras, our server access. Running without a plan would just accelerate whatever they had in store. I need to go back up, I said. Ezra went pale. That's insane. I won't touch the drink. But I need to leave on my own terms without them realizing I know. Can you get me a staff member? A woman. Someone who's not connected to the event. He nodded. There's a floor manager named Lucia. She's solid. Get her. And Ezra. Keep that recording. Email it to yourself. Don't delete anything. Don't tell anyone at the club what you told me. He hesitated, then said, I'm just a busboy, Mrs. Prescott. I don't have any power here. You have the truth. Right now, that's worth more than everything on that rooftop. I went back upstairs. I kept my face pale, my steps slow. It wasn't hard to look shaken because I was. The moment I sat down, Grant leaned over. You were gone a while. Are you okay? Dizzy, I said. I think my blood sugar dropped. Then drink something. Here. He pushed the old-fashioned closer. I stared at the glass. The cherry sat at the bottom like a small dark heart. I think I need water first, Lorraine cut in. Oh, stop being dramatic. One sip won't kill you. Grant went to the trouble of ordering it special. Special. The word landed like a brick. Trent laughed. Honestly, Camille, you've been wound so tight lately. Maybe take a few days off. Let Grant handle things. Paige raised her phone again. Let me get a shot of you two toasting. Come on, it's a big night. I pushed my chair back. I think I need to go to the ER. My chest feels tight. The table froze. Grant's face cycled through 3 emotions in 2 seconds: surprise, irritation, control. That's not necessary. I'll drive you home. We'll call Dr. Fenton. I don't want Dr. Fenton. I want an emergency room. Lorraine stood up. Camille, you're embarrassing this family. A little dizziness at dinner and you want to call 911? People will talk. I looked at her. People should talk. Dominic moved from the wall toward the service elevator. Grant noticed. I noticed him noticing. Lucia, the floor manager Ezra had called, appeared in the doorway. Excuse me, I was told a guest is feeling unwell. Would you like me to call an ambulance, or would you prefer to rest in our private suite? Grant stepped forward. That won't be necessary. I'm her husband. I'll take care of it. I grabbed Lucia's arm. The suite, please. Just me and a female staff member. Lorraine's voice turned to acid. You'd rather go with a stranger than your own husband. I didn't answer her. I let Lucia walk me out. In the suite, I locked the door and pulled out my phone. My hands were trembling. My father's oldest friend and a silent board member. 3 words. I need you now. Then I called Margot Yoon, the outside counsel my father had retained years ago and whom Grant had gradually pushed to the margins. Margot, it's Camille. Whatever you're doing, stop. I need you to know, as of this moment, I am not signing, authorizing, or consenting to any document. Anything that surfaces tonight or tomorrow with my name on it is fraudulent. Margot's voice was sharp and awake. Where are you, the Bellworth? Second floor. I'll explain everything, but I need it on record right now. Done. I'm on my way. I sat on a velvet couch in a room that cost $300 an hour and stared at my reflection in the dark window. The woman staring back had olive oil on her dress and a decade of misplaced trust in her eyes. 20 minutes later, Walter's car pulled up on Lower Wacker. Lucia walked me through the kitchen, past steam trays and cooks who didn't give me a second look. Ezra was there, holding a staff jacket. Put this on, keep your head down past the cameras. I looked at him. You're risking your job. He shrugged. I was already going to get written up for the Barada thing. Despite everything, I almost laughed. Walter was in the back seat. He was 71, white-haired, and looked like he hadn't slept well in years. He probably hadn't. When he saw me, he just said, "Get in." We drove to Margot's office in the West Loop. My phone started buzzing. Grant. Then Paige texted. "Where did you go? Grant is worried sick." Then Trent, "Stop playing games. Come home." Then Dominic, one sentence. "We can still fix this. We can still fix this." As if I were a broken appliance. Lorraine left a voicemail. Margot put it on speaker. "Camille, I have never been so humiliated. You walk out of your husband's celebration like a petulant child? Your father would be ashamed. A good wife supports her husband. She doesn't run to lawyers at the first sign of trouble." Margot looked at me. A mother-in-law who's worried about her daughter-in-law asks, "Are you safe?" A mother-in-law who's worried about a plan asks, "Where did you go?" That sentence cut deeper than anything Lorraine had said. At 1 a.m., Ruth Gaines arrived. She had been Ashford Group's CFO for 15 years, until 6 months ago when Grant accused her of mismanaging a budget projection and had her reassigned to a satellite office in Milwaukee. She'd driven 2 hours in the middle of the night with a cardboard box full of files. "I never mismanaged anything," Ruth said, placing the box on the table. "I found discrepancies in procurement and tried to bring them to you. 3 times, your secretary said you were unavailable. The 4th time, Dominic stopped me at the elevator and told me the executive floor was restricted." She opened the first folder. "Trent's been inflating material costs on the Crown project by at least 15%. He splits contracts into amounts just below the threshold that would trigger board review. The overpayments go to 2 shell companies, one registered to a college roommate of Trent's, the other to a cousin of Lorraine's in Scottsdale." I felt sick. Every Sunday dinner, Lorraine had told me to be patient with Trent. He's finding his footing. Family takes time to grow. Family. They'd used that word like a skeleton key, opening every door I should have kept locked. Next through the door was Philip Oka, Ashford Group's former general counsel. Grant had transferred him to a compliance role in a regional office after Philip refused to draft power of attorney documents that would give Grant emergency voting rights over my shares. Philip placed a binder on the table. "This is what they wanted me to prepare. A temporary transfer of executive authority, triggered by a physician's determination that the CEO is mentally or physically incapacitated. It was designed to look like a precaution, but the triggering physician is Dr. Fenton, who plays golf with Grant every Saturday." I turned the pages. Dry legal language. Temporarily unable to fulfill duties. Family designee to assume operational control. Effective immediately upon medical certification. They didn't need to forge my signature, they just needed me unconscious long enough for a friendly doctor to check a box. Margot spoke quietly. "They weren't planning a coup, Camille. They were planning a medical kidnapping wrapped in corporate bylaws." At 3 a.m, Walter placed a sealed envelope on the table. I recognized my father's handwriting on the front. "For Camille. Only when it matters." "Your father gave this to me 6 months before he died," Walter said. "He told me not to open it unless you were in real danger from people inside the company." My throat closed. "He knew?" Walter paused. "Hugh never said he didn't trust Grant. He said he trusted you too much to love carefully. He worried that your kindness would be used against you." I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter and a USB drive. My father's handwriting, the same handwriting that had labeled my lunchboxes in elementary school, filled 2 pages. "Camille, if you're reading this, I owe you an apology. Not for doubting the people around you, but for not teaching you sooner that love and loyalty aren't the same thing. I had an independent audit conducted quietly. The results are on the drive. I didn't confront anyone because I didn't want to poison your marriage based on suspicion. But I wanted you to have the ammunition if suspicion became certainty. Trust the people who stayed when there was nothing to gain. They're your real family." I folded the letter and pressed it against my chest. "Some fathers leave you money. Mine left me a lifeboat he'd built while he was dying. By dawn, we had the full picture. The inflated contracts, the shell companies, the manipulated security logs. Pages pre-written press releases announcing my temporary health leave. Edited video clips of me looking exhausted in meetings, stripped of context. A schedule showing that every time Ruth or Philip or Walter had tried to meet with me, the appointment had been canceled or moved by my new executive assistant, the one Grant had hired. At 7 in the morning, I changed into a black blazer that Margot kept in her office closet. I pulled my hair back. I wiped the mascara from under my eyes. "I'm going to the office," I said. Walter looked at me. "You haven't slept. I'll sleep when the building is mine again." We drove to the Ashford Group headquarters on Michigan Avenue. The morning security guard straightened when he saw me. "Good morning, Ms. Ashford." I nodded. Not Mrs. Prescott. That distinction had never mattered to me before. Now it felt like armor. On the 14th floor, my new assistant was standing outside the main conference room looking flustered. "Mrs. Ashford, I wasn't expecting. Mr. Prescott called an emergency leadership meeting this morning. He said you were unwell and a meeting about my company that I wasn't invited to." She turned red. I didn't blame her. She was 24 and just following the instructions of the man who'd hired her. Through the glass walls, I could see Grant sitting at the head of the table, my father's chair, with a presentation on the screen behind him that read Operational Continuity Plan. Trent stood by the display with a laser pointer. Paige had her laptop open, fingers poised over the keyboard. Dominic was stationed by the door. Lorraine stood outside the glass wall with two of Grant's uncles, watching like spectators at a trial. I pushed the door open. Every conversation stopped. Grant's face went through surprise, then irritation, then a controlled smile. "Camille, you should be resting." I walked to the head of the table, picked up the nameplate that had been shoved aside. Camille Ashford, Chief Executive Officer, and placed it back in position. "Are you ghost rehearsing for my funeral? Or is this something else?" The room solidified. Trent swallowed. Paige closed her laptop halfway. Dominic shifted his weight toward the exit. Grant spread his hands. "This isn't what it looks like. You left the dinner without a word." Everyone was concerned. "I'm just making sure the Crown project stays on track." I sat down. "Margot, start the recording." Margot placed a recorder on the table. "I am Margot Yoon, legal counsel for Ms. Camille Ashford. This meeting is being recorded and minuted." A senior project manager across the table raised his hand slightly. "Ms. Ashford, we were told you were having a medical issue. If you're able to lead, that's great. But can someone explain what happened last night?" "What happened last night will be explained with evidence, not with rumors." I connected my phone to the conference room display. Ezra's recording played. Grant's own voice filled the room. "The drink has to happen before dessert. Once she's out, Dom takes her down the freight elevator." Nobody moved. A board member slowly removed his glasses. Grant forced a laugh. "That could be anyone's voice. Deepfakes are everywhere. I'm her husband. Why would I?" I swiped to the text messages. Pages, "Grant is worried sick." Trent's, "Stop playing games." Dominic's, "We can still fix this." Then Lorraine's voicemail, playing through the speakers for the entire room. Not a single question about my health, only anger about embarrassment. "You say the recording could be faked," I said. "Are the messages from your entire family, sent within an hour of me leaving the building, also faked?" Trent jumped in. I was worried. Maybe I was blunt. But this is a family matter. Family matters don't involve drugged drinks and freight elevators. Paige tried next. "This is being blown out of proportion. I was just keeping communications ready in case." "In case what?" "In case I was carried out unconscious and you needed to announce my health leave before sunrise." I pulled up the draft press release from Paige's work account, the one Philip had preserved. The headline, "Ashford Group takes temporary leave. CO Grant Prescott to oversee key operations." The room murmured. Outside the glass, Lorraine was pounding on the wall. "She's lost her mind. Someone call Dr. Fenton." I looked at her through the glass. "Dr. Fenton won't be making house calls for this family anymore." Margot stood. Pursuant to the Ashford Group bylaws, when a senior executive demonstrates a conflict of interest or engages in conduct that threatens shareholder value, the CEO has the authority to suspend their operational duties pending an independent review. I took my father's pen from my bag. It was a Mont Blanc he'd bought himself the day Ashford Group closed its first $1 million deal. I signed 4 documents. The first suspended Grant from all executive functions related to the Crown project, and revoked his access to contracts, partner communications, and financial systems. Grant stood up. "You can't do this to me. You prepared a drugged cocktail, a freight elevator exit, and a power of attorney package, but I can't sign a resolution that follows our own bylaws." He had no answer. The second document suspended Trent from procurement. His files, vendor accounts, and company devices were to be sealed immediately. Trent shouted, "Every contract went through proper channels. Ruth, sitting quietly until now, opened her folder. Proper channels don't funnel overpayments to shell companies in Scottsdale. The third suspended page from communications, her laptop, social media credentials, and access to the company image archive were confiscated on the spot. Paige burst into tears. I was just doing what Grant told me to do. Then you should have asked what you were doing it for. The fourth revoked all of Dominic's security credentials. His access cards, server admin accounts, and camera management privileges were to be surrendered by noon, witnessed by an independent IT firm. Dominic gave a cold smile. Taking my key card won't undo the system. Philip answered from across the table. No, but the system logs will undo you. Servers have better memories than people. Outside, Lorraine was sobbing now, loud and performative. She's destroying her own family. What kind of woman does this? I opened the conference room door and stood in front of her. Grant's uncles stepped back. Lorraine, you taught me that a wife should protect her home. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm protecting the home my father built. I'm just no longer protecting the people who were trying to steal it. She stared at me. For the first time in 8 years, she had nothing to say. Grant followed me into the hallway. 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes alone. Every conversation about Ashford Group goes through Margot now. On the record with witnesses. Are you really this cold? I turned to face him. Last night, you weren't planning to drug me privately, were you? He went white. That afternoon, we went back to the Bellworth with Margot and a private investigator. The club manager was nervous, overly polite, wiping sweat from his forehead. We secured the hallway camera footage showing Dominic stationed by the freight elevator. We obtained the bar log confirming my old-fashioned was prepared separately from all other drinks. On special instruction from the event host, the bartender confirmed that Dominic had stood watching while the drink was made. And thanks to Ezra's quiet word to Lucia, the glass I never drank from had been set aside in a sealed bag in the club's storage room. Ezra was there, in his uniform looking exhausted. I asked if the club had given him trouble. He glanced at the manager. They asked why I spilled the food. I said I tripped. I turned to the manager. This employee followed your own guest safety protocols. If he faces any retaliation, Ashford Group's legal team will be very interested in this club's liability for what was planned on its premises. The manager nodded quickly. Before we left, I stood in the hallway where Ezra had first told me to run. The private dining terrace was dark now. No champagne, no applause. No cherry sitting at the bottom of a glass like a small dark heart. Ezra, I said, keep your head down. Finish your semester. Don't talk to anyone from my family about this. He nodded. I didn't do it for a reward, ma'am. I just couldn't let my sister grow up in a world where the person who saved her gets taken out by her own husband. The divorce took 3 months. Grant tried everything. Crying, threatening, bargaining. In our final mediation, he sat across from me in a wrinkled shirt, unshaven, looking like a man who'd been hollowed out from the inside. I never wanted to hurt you, he said. I just wanted to be seen as more than your husband. Then you should have built something of your own, instead of trying to steal what my father built. You've changed. The woman you married would have drunk that cocktail. He signed the settlement. My shares stayed with me, as they were separate property inherited from my father. The Crown project continued under my direct oversight with independent monitors. Trent's shell companies were reported to federal investigators. Dominic's security manipulations were documented and forwarded to the authorities. Paige's manufactured media campaign was dismantled. Lorraine came to the mediation. She didn't bring relatives this time. She sat alone on a bench in the hallway, clutching her purse, looking 10 years older than the woman who'd declared at dinner that a firm hand was what Ashford Group needed. Can you give him another chance? She asked when she saw me. I gave him 8 years of chances, Lorraine. He chose the freight elevator. She looked down and said nothing. The Crown project broke ground on schedule. I went to the site myself, hard hat and steel-toed boots, standing on the edge of a foundation pit overlooking Lake Michigan. An old foreman named Al recognized me. You're Hugh's kid, aren't you? He used to bring you here when you were small. You'd eat PB&J on the tailgate of his truck. I smiled. That sounds like him. He always said, if my daughter runs this company someday, she'll know what concrete smells like before she knows what a balance sheet looks like. Ruth came back as CFO. Philip returned to lead legal. Walter stayed on the board, quieter than ever but always watching. The security systems were handed to an independent firm. No single person would ever control the cameras, the access logs, and the CEO's schedule again. I hired a new executive assistant, one I chose myself. I created a confidential reporting channel so that anyone in the company, from a site worker to a VP, could flag concerns without going through a family member's gatekeeping. That lesson cost me a marriage, most of my in-laws, and 2 years of sleep. But it taught me something my father tried to tell me. And I was too in love to hear. Family can be the strongest foundation or the most dangerous fault line. The difference isn't love, it's accountability. Ezra finished his degree the following spring. He showed up at my office in a pressed shirt, holding a small potted succulent. My sister picked it out, he said. She wanted to give you something that's hard to kill. I laughed, a real laugh. The first one in a long time. I told him Ashford Group had a compliance department. If he wanted to apply, he should go through the regular process like anyone else. No favors, no fast tracks. His integrity was worth more than any shortcut. He applied. He was hired. Not because he spilled burrata on my dress, but because the kid who risked his minimum wage job to save a stranger turned out to be exactly the kind of person you want watching for fraud. That evening, I drove to my father's old house in Oak Park. The sugar maple in the front yard was bare, its branches scratching the November sky like fingers reaching for something already gone. I went into his study, the one room I'd left untouched. His drafting table was still covered in blueprints. His coffee mug still sat on the shelf, stained dark from decades of use. I poured 2 glasses of Blanton's, his favorite bourbon. I set one on his desk next to the framed photo of us at a job site when I was 7, both of us in hard hats, both of us grinning. I held on, Dad. It wasn't pretty, and I'm still cleaning up the mess. But the building is going up, and nobody took your chair. I thought about that rooftop dinner, the crystal chandelier, the Dom Perignon, the smoked cherry at the bottom of a glass I never drank. I thought about Grant's toast, the most important woman in my life, and how a sentence can be both a love letter and a ransom note depending on who's writing it. After the divorce, people asked if I hated him. The truth is, hate would have been easier. What I felt was something quieter and more exhausting. The grief of realizing that the person you trusted most had been building a trap around you so slowly that by the time you noticed the walls, you'd already decorated them and called them home. I chose to remember just enough to never be foolish again, and to let go of just enough to keep breathing. There's nothing wrong with being a wife. There's nothing wrong with trusting your partner or wanting to build something together. But when someone uses the word family like a crowbar to pry open doors that don't belong to them, that's not love. That's a heist with a wedding ring. Some people are saved by grand gestures. I was saved by a 21-year-old busboy who couldn't afford to lose his job, but couldn't afford to lose his conscience either. He spilled a bowl of burrata on my dress, and in doing so, he kept me from being carried out of my own life through a freight elevator on Lower Wacker Drive. I never did finish that old-fashioned, but I kept the dress. It still has the olive oil stain. Some stains are worth keeping, because every time I look at it, I remember. The people sitting at your table calling you darling aren't always the ones who'll save you. Sometimes, it's the stranger standing by the kitchen door, shaking, holding a truth he can barely carry, but carrying it anyway because someone once signed a piece of paper that kept his sister alive. That's the thing about kindness. You throw it into the world like a seed, not knowing where it lands. And sometimes, years later, on the worst night of your life, it grows back just in time to catch you.